The Galactic Gambit. Zara Vance stood at the viewport of the transport vessel, gazing out at the sprawling expanse of Krylos Station. The massive structure hung suspended in the void, a beacon of diplomacy amidst the cold stars. As an experienced negotiator for the human alliance, Zara had been tasked with the crucial mission of brokering peace with the Zordan Empire. The conflict between their two civilizations had raged for decades, a bitter struggle fueled by mistrust and misunderstanding. But now, after years of bloodshed and loss, both sides had agreed to come to the negotiating table. Zara knew the fate of countless lives hinged on the success of these talks. As the transport docked with the station, Zara straightened her uniform and gathered her composure. She was greeted by a delegation of Krylos officials, their faces a mix of human and alien features. Among them stood Ambassador Thaxos, the Zordan Empire's chosen representative. Thaxos cut an imposing figure, his towering frame draped in the dark robes of his office. His eyes, a piercing amber hue, seemed to bore into Zara as they exchanged formal greetings. There was an air of dismissiveness in his demeanor, a subtle disdain for the human diplomat before him. As they made their way to the conference room, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that Thaxos viewed humanity as inferior, a lesser species unworthy of the Zordan Empire's respect. She had encountered such attitudes before in her diplomatic career, but never from someone in such a pivotal position. The conference room was a grand affair, with sweeping views of the stars beyond. Representatives from both sides took their seats across the polished table, the weight of their responsibilities hanging heavy in the air. Zara steeled herself, knowing that the negotiations ahead would test her skills and resolve like never before. Thaxos began with a list of demands, his voice dripping with condescension. He spoke of the Zordan Empire's might, their superior technology, and vast resources. The human alliance, he implied, should be grateful for the opportunity to even sit at the same table. Zara listened patiently, her face a mask of calm composure. When Thaxos finished, she began her own carefully crafted response. She spoke of humanity's resilience, their unbreakable spirit in the face of adversity. She reminded the Zordan delegation of the countless times humans had defied the odds, rising from the ashes of conflict to build a better future. As the talk stretched on, Zara could sense a shift in the room. Some of the Zordan representatives seemed taken aback by her words, their preconceived notions of human weakness slowly eroding. But Thaxos remained unmoved, his gaze fixed on Zara with an intensity that was almost unsettling. In a private moment during a recess, Thaxos approached Zara, his voice low and menacing. "You speak well, human," he said, "but words alone will not save your species. The Zordan Empire has grown weary of this conflict, and we will have what we desire, one way or another." Zara met his gaze unflinchingly, her voice steady as she replied. "And what is it that you desire, Ambassador?" "Dominion over the galaxy, the subjugation of all who stand in your way. The human alliance seeks only peace and cooperation, but we will not surrender our freedom or dignity." Thaxos let out a low chuckle, his eyes glinting with something Zara couldn't quite place. Freedom and dignity, he mused, such lofty ideals. But in the end, only strength matters. And the Zordan Empire has strength in abundance. With that, he turned and strode away, leaving Zara to ponder the true nature of the challenge before her. She knew the road to peace would be a long and treacherous one, fraught with hidden agendas and ancient animosities. But as she looked out at the stars once more, Zara felt a renewed sense of purpose. The human alliance had faced countless trials throughout its history, and had always emerged stronger for it. Whatever the Zordan Empire had in store, she knew humanity would meet it head-on, with the same unwavering spirit that had carried them to the stars. The Galactic Gambit had only just begun, and Zara Vance was ready to play her part. For the sake of her people, and for the future of the galaxy itself, failure was not an option. Behind enemy lines, Rian Ezek crept through the shadows of the Zordan military base, his heart pounding in his chest. As a deep cover operative for the Human Alliance, he had spent months infiltrating the ranks of the enemy, gathering critical intelligence on their movements and capabilities. Now, as he made his way through the labyrinthine corridors of the base, Ryan knew he was closer than ever to uncovering the Zordan Empire's most closely guarded secrets. The information he sought could turn the tide of the war, giving humanity a fighting chance against their relentless foe. As he rounded a corner, Ryan found himself face to face with a young Zordan technician. The alien, barely out of adolescence, stared at Ryan with wide, frightened eyes. For a moment, neither of them moved, tension crackling in the air between them. Then, to Ryan's surprise, the technician spoke. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "You're one of them, aren't you? A human spy." Ryan hesitated, weighing his options. He could try to bluff his way out of the situation, or he could take a gamble and trust in the young Zordan's apparent uncertainty. Something in the technician's eyes, a flicker of doubt and fear, made Ryan's decision for him. "Yes," he said softly, "I am human, but I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to find the truth, to try and stop this war before it destroys us all." The technician, who introduced himself as Varric, listened intently as Ryan spoke. As they talked, Ryan began to realize that not all Zordans were the ruthless, militaristic zealots he had been led to believe. Varric, like many of his generation, had grown up in the shadow of the war, and had begun to question the propaganda and rhetoric of his leaders. Over the next few days, Ryan and Varric met in secret, sharing their hopes and fears for the future. Varric revealed that he had overheard troubling rumors about a new weapon being developed by the Zordan military, a device of unimaginable destructive power. Ryan knew he had to find out more. With Varric's help, he managed to gain access to a high-security research lab deep within the base. There, amidst the gleaming banks of computers and instrumentation, he discovered the terrible truth. The Zordans were constructing a massive quantum singularity cannon, capable of tearing apart the fabric of space-time itself. The weapon was designed to target human colonies, wiping them from existence in a single devastating blast. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine as he pored over the schematics and test data. This was it, the intelligence he had been searching for. With this information, the Human Alliance could develop countermeasures, find a way to neutralize the Zordan threat once and for all. But as he prepared to make his escape, alarms began to blare throughout the base. Varric burst into the lab, his face pale with terror. "They know," he gasped. "They know you're here. You have to go. Now." Ryan didn't hesitate. With Varric's help, he managed to slip away in the chaos, making his way to a hidden shuttle bay. As he prepared to depart, he turned to his unlikely ally, clasping his hand firmly. "Thank you," he said, "for everything. I won't forget what you've done here, Varric. When this is all over, I promise I'll do everything in my power to help build a better future for both our peoples." Varric nodded, his eyes glistening with emotion. "Go," he said, "and may the stars guide you to safety." As Ryan's shuttle blasted away from the base, he knew the road ahead would be a difficult one. The Zordan Empire would stop at nothing to protect their terrible secret, and time was running out. But he also knew that he carried with him the hopes and dreams of billions, the fragile promise of a future free from the shadow of war. And for that, he was willing to risk everything. The battle for the future had only just begun, and Ryan Azek would be there to see it through to the end, no matter the cost. The Vanguard. Captain Nora Helios stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, her eyes fixed on the view screen before her. The ship, a marvel of human engineering and ingenuity, hung in the void like a gleaming sword, ready to strike at the heart of the enemy. For weeks, the Vanguard had been patrolling the borders of Zordan space, a silent sentinel against the gathering darkness. Nora and her crew were the best of the best, hand-picked for their skill, courage, and unwavering dedication to the cause of human freedom. As she watched the stars drift by, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The Zordons had been uncharacteristically quiet in recent days, their ships and outposts seemingly abandoned. It was as if they were holding their breath, waiting for some unseen signal to strike. Suddenly, a shrill alarm pierced the stillness of the bridge. "Captain," one of the officers called out, "we're picking up a distress signal, just outside the Aleph sector. It's faint, but definitely of Zordon origin." Nora frowned, her mind racing. The Aleph sector was a notorious haven for pirates and smugglers, a lawless expanse of space where few dared to venture. What was a Zordon ship doing so far from home? And why were they calling for help? She weighed her options carefully. To investigate the signal would mean diverting the Vanguard from its primary mission and potentially exposing her crew to unknown dangers. But if there were Zordon survivors out there, desperate and alone, could she really turn her back on them? In the end, Nora's sense of duty won out. "Set a course for the distress beacon," she ordered, and put the ship on high alert. "If this is a trap, I want us ready for anything." As the Vanguard surged forward, Nora couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. She had faced the Zordons in battle countless times, had seen the ruthless efficiency of their war machine firsthand. But this felt different, somehow, like they were walking into a nightmare from which there might be no waking. Hours later, they arrived at the source of the signal. Floating before them, amid a field of glittering debris, was the shattered hull of a Zordon transport vessel. Its once sleek contours were twisted and blackened, the telltale scars of weapon fire marring its surface. Nora ordered a scan of the wreckage, hoping against hope to find signs of life. To her surprise, the sensors detected a handful of faint biosigns, clinging to life in the mangled remains of the ship. She knew what she had to do. "Prepare a rescue team," she said, "and have the med bay standing by. We're bringing them aboard." The decision was a controversial one, and not just because of the risk of Zordon sabotage. Many among the crew had lost friends and loved ones to the Zordon onslaught, and the thought of aiding their sworn enemy stuck in their throats like a bitter pill. But Nora was resolute. "We're better than this," she said, her voice ringing out across the bridge. "We're not just fighting for survival, but for the soul of humanity itself. If we abandon our principles, even in the face of our darkest foes, then what are we really fighting for?" In the end, the rescue mission was a success. The Zordon survivors, battered and broken, were brought aboard the Vanguard and given the medical attention they so desperately needed. As Nora watched over them in the med bay, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Perhaps in this small act of compassion, they had planted the seeds of something greater. A chance for understanding, for healing, for a future where human and Zordon could stand side by side in the light of a new dawn. But even as she dared to dream, Nora knew the road ahead would be long and hard. The Zordon Empire was a vast and formidable foe, and the scars of the past ran deep. For now, all she could do was hold fast to her convictions and trust in the strength and resilience of the human spirit. The Vanguard would continue its mission, a shining beacon of hope in the darkness of space, and Captain Nora Helios would be there to lead the way, no matter the cost. Shattered Alliance. Ambassador Thaxos paced the length of his quarters, his mind wrestling with the implications of his secret meeting with Zara Vance. The human diplomat's words echoed in his ears, a tantalizing whisper of hope amidst the chaos and destruction of the war. For years, Thaxos had been a member of a clandestine Zordon rebel faction, working tirelessly to undermine the warmongering leaders of the Empire. He had seen firsthand the suffering and devastation wrought by their relentless pursuit of power, and knew that the only path to true peace lay in cooperation, not conquest. But the rebels were outnumbered and outgunned, forced to operate in the shadows, always one step away from discovery and annihilation. They needed allies, and Thaxos believed that the human alliance could be that ally. He had approached Zara with an offer, a chance to forge a covered alliance between their two peoples. Together, they could work to bring down the Zordon warlords from within, paving the way for a new era of understanding and mutual prosperity. But even as he spoke the words, Thaxos could sense Zara's hesitation. The wounds of the past ran deep, and trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered by the weight of history. And then there was the matter of the impending attack. Thaxos had uncovered evidence of a massive Zordan assault force, poised to strike at the heart of the human alliance. The rebels had managed to delay the invasion, but time was running out. He had shared this intelligence with Zora, hoping that it would be enough to sway her to his cause. But he knew that the risks were immense. If word of their alliance were to reach the wrong ears, it could spell doom for them both, and for the fragile hope of peace they represented. As he wrestled with these thoughts, a chime sounded at his door. Thaxos composed himself, straightening his robes and schooling his features into a mask of calm authority. When he opened the door, he found himself face to face with a figure from his past, a fellow rebel named Lixer. The two had served together in the early days of the resistance, before Thaxos had risen to his current position of influence. Lixer's face was grim, etched with the lines of countless battles and hardships. "We have a problem," he said without preamble, his voice low and urgent. "The warlords have discovered our plans. They know about the alliance." Thaxos felt a coldness settle in the pit of his stomach. "How?" he asked, his mind racing with possibilities. "We don't know," Lixer replied, "but we have to act fast. They're moving to consolidate their power, to crush any opposition before it can take root." Thaxos nodded, his resolve hardening. "Then we have no choice," he said. "We must accelerate our plans and hope that our human allies are ready for what's to come." Together, the two rebels began to lay out a desperate gambit, a last-ditch effort to seize control of the Zordan war machine from within. They knew the odds were stacked against them, that they were risking everything on a slender thread of hope. But they also knew that the alternative was unthinkable, a future where the Zordan Empire reigned supreme, where the light of freedom and self-determination was snuffed out forever. And so, in the shadows of Krylos Station, a new alliance was born, human and Zordan, rebel and diplomat, united by a common cause and a shared vision of a better tomorrow. The road ahead would be treacherous, fraught with danger and uncertainty. But for Ambassador Thaxos and his fellow rebels, there could be no turning back. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and they would risk everything to see it through, no matter the cost. The dream of peace, of a future where Zordan and human could stand side by side as equals, was worth fighting for. And fight they would, until the very end. Unbroken resolve. The Zordan invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of locusts, their ships darkening the skies above Earth. In an instant, the fragile peace that had held for so long was shattered, replaced by the brutal reality of all-out war. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Captain Nora Helios watched in horror as the first wave of enemy fire rained down upon the planet below. The Zordan onslaught was relentless, their weapons cutting through the defenses of the human alliance like a knife through butter. But even in the face of overwhelming odds, the humans refused to surrender. With a fierce battle cry, the Vanguard and its Galactic fleet of allies surged forward to meet the enemy head-on. The battle was joined near the red sands of Mars, the once peaceful colony now a scorched and blackened wasteland. Nora led her ship into the heart of the fray, her crew fighting with a desperate fury born of the knowledge that they were all that stood between their homeworld and annihilation. Losses mounted on both sides as the battle raged on, the void of space lit by the flash of exploding ships and the brilliant trails of torpedo fire. The Vanguard took hit after hit, its shield straining under the onslaught, but still it fought on, a shining beacon of defiance against the darkness. On Krylos Station, Ambassador Thaxos and Zara Vance watched the unfolding carnage with heavy hearts. They had both known that it would come to this, that the fragile alliances and backroom deals they had forged could only hold the tide for so long. But even in the face of despair, they refused to give up hope. With a shared look of determination, the two diplomats made one final, desperate plea for peace. They broadcast across all frequencies, their voices ringing out across the battle-scarred void. "People of the Zordan Empire, hear us now," Thaxos began, his voice heavy with emotion. For too long, we have been locked in a cycle of hatred and mistrust, of endless war and suffering. But it doesn't have to be this way. Zara picked up the thread, her own voice steady and clear. We are not so different, your people and mine. We all dream of a better future, of a universe where our children can grow and thrive in peace. Is this not worth fighting for? As their words echoed across the stars, a change began to ripple through the Zordan fleet. Some ships began to break off their attacks, their crews hesitating in the face of this unexpected plea for reconciliation. But the warlords of the Empire would not be so easily swayed. With a snarl of rage, they ordered their ships to press the attack, to grind the humans beneath their armored heels once and for all. It was then that Ryan, Ezek, and Varric made their move. The two unlikely allies had infiltrated the Zordan flagship, fighting their way through waves of enemy soldiers with a grim determination. Their goal was the ship's central control nexus, the pulsing heart from which the warlords directed their campaign of conquest. If they could disable the nexus, sever the command and control of the invasion fleet, then perhaps there was still a chance for victory. The battle was fierce and bloody, but in the end, Ryan and Varric prevailed. With a final desperate lunge, they managed to overload the ship's primary systems, sending a cascading wave of destruction rippling through the Zordan fleet. In an instant, the tide of battle turned. The human alliance, battered but unbroken, surged forward with renewed purpose, driving the invaders back from the threshold of Earth. The cost had been high, the losses staggering on both sides. But as the dust of battle settled, a new hope began to dawn. On the ruins of Krylos Station, Thaxos and Zara stood hand in hand, their eyes fixed on the stars above. The war was far from over, the scars of the past far from healed. But for the first time in generations, there was a chance for something more. A chance for understanding, for forgiveness, for a future where human and Zordan could stand together in the light of a new and better age. It would not be an easy road, and many challenges lay ahead. But as Captain Norit Helios and her crew set course for home, their hearts swelled with a fierce and unshakable pride. They had faced the darkness and emerged unbroken, their resolve tempered in the fire of adversity. And they knew that whatever the future might bring, they would face it as one. For they were human, and they would never surrender. The dream of peace, of a universe where all could live in harmony and mutual respect, was worth fighting for. And fight they would, until the very stars themselves burned out and faded away. For in the end, it was the only fight that mattered. The fight for hope, for unity, for a better tomorrow.